in this other example, what I wanted to do was, nope, that's wrong. Let's see. What I wanted to do was do another example where we're actually writing code for playing dice, right? Let's say everybody knows how to play dice, right?
Ludo.
Yeah. So in this case, let's say it's a dice game, a PY. In this case, we're going to use 2 dice, right?
Yeah.
So again, if we're going to roll dice, we need to randomly choose numbers between 1 and 6, right? So if we're going to randomly choose numbers, we definitely need to import the random module. Let's import the random module and let's roll the dice.
Quick question here on this import. Sometimes I see import, for example, random as something, right? Then versus just random. What is the difference?
Okay, so let's say random as R. We're using R as alias. That's because in this case, I probably want to be lazy. I don't want to type random each time.
Oh.
Right? But if it's something complicated from this import blah, 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 if you're pulling it from a folder that has many modules and many things in there, and then you want to select just one function in there, okay? Let's say random.randint, or let's say random import randint. So now I'm importing just that particular function. I'm not importing the entire file. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so it depends on, sometimes you might have some really big libraries that you don't need the whole library to be imported to your code and make it too bulky. You might want to pick just one file. In some cases, you might have one file that has many functions, which is a large file. Then you want to pick just a particular function within the file. But now I'm giving it an alias. So every time I use R, that's what I'm referring to. Does that make sense? So now we want to roll a dice. If we want to roll a dice, we define a function and say roll dice. It does not take any input. All we need to do is say the dice total would be equal to rolling each of those dice. So I'll have R in quotes. Now, just by putting R, it knows that I'm referring to random int. That's why you see it's telling me random integer in range A and B. So the range I need is 1 and 6. Does that make sense? But that's just for 1. And then I need to create another one. Let's say we're doing 2 dice. So I could have just said 1 and 12, but that's not going to truly show that I'm rolling 2 dice. It's just going to give me a number between 1 and 12. But if I do it twice, then I'm picking a number randomly between 1 and 6 and then doing it again and adding the 2 of them together. So it actually simulates 2 rolls rather than just getting 1, 12, 1 bit 1 and 12. Okay. So after rolling that die, I want to return the value. What do I return? The dice total. So now that the dice total has been returned, I can go ahead and define my main function. Okay, the main function is what actually executes my program, because at the end of the day, that's what I'm going to call. So next thing I want to say is player number 1 should be equal to, let's say, what was the name of that function? I think I had a function. I should probably import it to this function right here.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's see, it's called enter input. So let's go ahead and say function import enter input as let's say user input. That's even long.
So in that case, is there any benefits you have an alias?
Yeah, the alias is just making you have a what do I call it? A shortcut per se.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of you calling my full name Zekeze, you just call me DK all the time, so it's easy. Right. So let's see, now we've imported the enter input function as u. I can go ahead and say u, and then I'll say player 1. It's going to ask for player 1 to enter their name, right? And oops, why did I do that? I need to do it back. Excellent. I used to have a shortcut that I used, but obviously it's not being friendly with me. That's fine. So player 2, let's go ahead and enter player 2. So we've entered the 2 players. Now I can go ahead and roll the dice for player 1. So roll player 1. What they're going to do is roll those dice. I don't have any input because the roll dice does not have any parameters.
Yeah.
And roll for player 2. Then give me roll dice 10. So now I'll end up with 2 random numbers between 1 and 12. Now I can go ahead and output my values by printing it. All I have to do and say player 1 rolled whatever roll that was. Same for player 2. Copy that and paste it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I've asked the player 1 to enter their name, player 2 to enter their name, player 1 rolls their dice, player 2 rolls their dice. I print out their output. Let me go ahead and add some comments in there. Get names of players. And each player rolls die. And print the output. But after printing it, we need to know who the winner is. Okay. So again, let's go ahead and use a conditional function to say find winner. Go ahead and say if roll 1 is greater than roll 2, then who is the winner? Player 1 wins, right?
Yeah.
So player 1 wins. Now we want to also check if they are not the winner or if it's the reverse. So I'll go ahead and use an elif. If player 2 is greater than player 1, player 2 wins. Otherwise, we have a tie. That's it. So after doing all of that, we can then go ahead and execute this main function. Okay, because we've defined our roll dice variable, we've defined the main function. We can now go ahead and execute it. Execute it just by calling main. That's it. 30 lines of code, we've been able to get roll dice to function properly for us. So let's go ahead and try executing this. Any questions before I execute it?
No.
All right, so let's execute
that. Yes. So when we were doing the structure of a function, we saw that to end the function, you use like return. So the main here is in place of return or no? The main on line 30.
Very good question. The main function is having a few print lines, right?
Yes.
It's printing a bunch of things for us, whether they win or not. The return in this case is on line 7 because that's where the real action is taking place. So the action is taking place when you roll the dice. If you roll the dice, you return that value. Now we are comparing these two. We can actually pull this out completely to be in another function. Maybe we can create a function that says find winner.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense?
Okay.
So we can do a function that says find winner. Again, like I said, writing code is a piece of art. It's up to you. We can decide to, rather than do all of this, we could just use another function which is built in actually, which is max. And then all you have to do is maximum of the two values, what you wrote, what player 1 wrote and what player 2 wrote. Whichever is the maximum will then be telling you who is the winner. But instead of using max, we're using greater than in there. So it's up to you which way you want to use it. If you want, the main function is usually like the body of the function that everything else falls inside. So that we can use that and call it, and it should work just fine. And again, I think when you save this file and open that file, the main function executes automatically. Just like a web page. When you go to a folder that has a web page, it automatically goes to the index.html. Right? So let's execute this and see where we get. So it wants enter player 1. Let's try and see if everyone knows how to play dice. Ooh, we have an error. Why is there an error? Because we converted everything, the input, to an integer. And it's not able to convert everyone to an integer. So that was a bad move for us. So maybe we need to change that and not have an integer. So in here, we have that integer conversion.
Yeah, I struggled with that last night.
Yes. So again, we might need to get another function in here that does not take an integer. Let me go ahead and just cheat. In this case, we don't want to convert to an integer. Let's copy that and paste. So I'm going to, I don't think we need that actually, because we're just getting an input. So if we're just getting an input, all I can do there is just get an input, blah, 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 blah. Instead of you, I'm just going to comment this out. We don't need that. And instead of you here, I'm just going to get input.
Yeah.
Should not have caps. Yep. So it's just going to say player 1 with a column and new line, the column and new line. We've already seen how to use the functions before, so that's fine. Now let's execute this. It wants player 1, and let's see, get everyone back on there and Adolf. All right. So player 2 was Adolf. Everyone wrote 5 and Adolf wrote 8. So Adolf wins. All right. Let's clear this out again. There's a lot of students in here whose names start with A. So let's try one more execution. We have Anne, and we also have Fabian. Anne go 10 and Fabian. Fabian, how can you go 3 when you have 2 chances to go?
He got 1 and 2 respectively. So
I'm telling you, that's wonderfully horrible. So yeah, that's just how you go about doing a simple piece of code to do that execution. But in a very similar light, you can do that for just rock, paper, scissors, and then you still have a few hours before you turn in your homework for today. And with that, I think we have gone about 8 minutes over our time today. But it looks good so far. I think we're able to cover everything that we needed to do today. And just a quick recap again. We're able to go through the basics and benefits of functions. We also went through built-in and user-defined functions, defining and calling functions, arguments, parameters, voids, and return types, and debugged a few errors. All right. So what questions do you have?
I think this will be the last one. So how do you get to know, for example, maybe I should ask Aaron, how did he know that he should use random? And you were saying there is a function max. If I'm writing a code, how do I get to know? Does it just come with practice, learning one maybe at a time and knowing?
Very, very good. Very good. So it comes with practice also and research. So for instance, in here, I gave you a list of built-in functions, right? So you can always research and see the list of built-in functions, right? You can use max to compare 2 functions. And you can also, let me escape out of this and see if I can do that. Actually, I wanted to, let me drag this over. Yeah, you can use max to compare new functions and so on. But one thing you might want to do is you go to Python, built-in functions, maximize this back. Obviously, you want to go to python.org. It has a documentation of all those built-in functions as you see in here.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you can click on each one. Let's say float. If you click on float, it tells you what it does. But if you want to import functions, important functions that you can see are math functions. So let's say Python math functions. There are a bunch of other functions in there. So that's a library. As you can see, it shows you it's a math library. Math.sil gives you the rounding up per se. You can do factorials. You can return absolute values. You can do sums and exponents, sine, cosine, square roots, and so on and so forth. So there are a bunch of functions out there. So many. You have power, logarithmic, trigonometry, angular, hyperbolic, spatial functions, and so on and so forth. So like I said, Python is very versatile. Okay. If you want to look at constants, again, this is pi. If you want to see the floating point positive infinity, they can give you that as well, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the examples. All you have to do is import math in this case, and then you see all of those. But what Aaron did was he went a step further. Rather than doing just the rock, he was able to do random. So if I was going to ask you that question to make it random, I could have recommended that go ahead and research the random library, should I say module, to be able to import it. Does that make sense?
Yes,
and I think a lot in Excel. So because I know a bit of Excel, I think from the Excel part of it, and then I look for the answer.
Excellent, excellent. But yeah, again, we'll talk about a lot of that. I updated our schedule. So right now we're looking at functions. Tomorrow we'll look at collections and sequences. But at the last week, we'll look at libraries and frameworks. And then I'll also look at some tools. I know we've used Jupyter Notebook. We've used Visual Studio Code. And also looked at how we can push stuff out to GitHub. So I'll look at any other tools that would help you leverage your skill sets and also be able to give you competitive advantage in the market per se. Does that sound good?
Awesome. I can see Aaron already setting up that casino business where he will convert all the user input to a computer winning thing.
Excellent, excellent. So yeah, we'll be able to leverage all of this. We are definitely halfway through the course, and I'm glad that I'm seeing some productive output, right? We're halfway through on day 5. By the time we get to day 8, you guys will be very, very, very comfortable. So keep fighting, keep pushing, and I'll talk to you tomorrow at 1 Eastern time. Sounds good?
Thank you. Thanks.